then his time will probably not hang heavy on his hands. As for the young master here, he was up with the lark, he was on the most untractable horse in the hacienda, and away across the fields with his followers, chasing the bulls as he went; he was fishing, he was shooting, he was making bullets, he was leagues off at a village seeing a country bull fight, he was always in a good humour, and so were all who surrounded him. He was engaged in the dangerous amusement of collier, and by the evening it would have been a clever rider who had kept his eyes open after such a day's work. Never was there a young lad more evidently fitted for a free life in the country. There was a generous, frank liberality apparent in everything in this hacienda, that it was agreeable to witness, nothing petty or calculating. Señor , lame through an accident, and therefore unable to mount his horse, or to go far on foot, seemed singularly gentle and kind-hearted. The house is one of the prettiest and most cheerful we have seen yet, but we passed a great stone building on the road, which the proprietor of San Bartolo is having constructed for one of his family, which, if it keep its promise, will be a palace when finished. The principal produce of this hacienda is pimiento, the capsicum. There is the pimiento dulce and the pimiento picante, the sweet fruit of the common capsicum, and the fruit of the bird pepper capsicum. The Spaniards gave to all these peppers the name of chile, which they borrowed from the Indian word quachilili, and which to the native Mexicans is as necessary an ingredient of food as salt is to us. At dinner we had the greatest variety of fine fruit and pulque, which is particularly good in this neighbourhood. They also make here a quantity of excellent cheese. After dinner they proceeded to amuse us with the collier of the bulls, of which amusement the Mexicans throughout the whole republic are passionately fond. They collect a herd, single out several, gallop after them on horseback, and he who is most skilful catches the bull by the tail, passes it under his own right leg, turns it round the high pommel of his saddle, and wheeling his horse round at right angles by a sudden movement, the bull falls on his face. Even boys of 10 years old joined in this sport. It is no wonder that the Mexicans are such centaurs, seeming to form part and parcel of their horses, accustomed as they are from childhood to these dangerous pastimes. This is very dangerous, since the horse's legs constantly get entangled with those of the falling bull, which throws both horse and rider. Manifold are the accidents which result from it, but they are certainly not received as warnings, and after all, such sports, where there is nothing bloody, nor even cruel, saving the thump which the bull gets, and the mortification which he no doubt feels, but from both of which he soon recovers, and which are mere games of skill, trials of address, are manly and strengthening, and help to keep up the physical superiority of that fine race of men, the Mexican rancheros. The next day we parted from our travelling companions, the Count de B and Mr. W, who are on their way to the fair of San Juan, and are from thence going to Tepic, even to the shores of the Pacific Ocean. Unfortunately, our time is limited, and we cannot venture on so distant an expedition, but we greatly regretted separating from such pleasant compagnons de voyage. We spent the morning in walking about the hacienda, seeing cheese made, and visiting the handsome chapel, the splendid stone granaries, the great mills, etc. We also hope to spend some time here on our return. By letters received this morning from Mexico, we find that Señor Gomez Pedraza has left the ministry. As we had but 6 leagues to ride in order to reach Morelia, we did not leave San Bartolo till 4 in the afternoon, and enjoyed a pretty ride through a fertile and well wooded country, the road good and the evening delightful. As the sun set, millions and tens of millions of ducks, in regular ranks and regiments, darkening the air, flew over our heads, changing their quarters from one lake to another. Morelia is celebrated for the purity of its atmosphere and the exceeding beauty of its sky, and this evening upheld its reputation. Towards sunset the whole western horizon was covered with myriads of little lilac and gold clouds, floating in every fantastic form over the bright blue of the heavens. The lilac deepened into purple, blushed into rose colour, brightened into crimson. The blue of the sky assumed that green tint peculiar to an Italian sunset. The sun himself appeared a globe of living flame. Gradually he sank in a blaze of gold and crimson, while the horizon remained lighted as by the flame from a volcano. Then his brilliant retinue of clouds, after blazing for a while in borrowed splendour, melted gradually into every rainbow hue and tinge, from deep crimson to rose colour and pink and pale violet and faint blue, floating in silvery vapour, until they all blended into one soft gray tinge, which swept over the whole western sky. But then the full moon rose in cloudless serenity, and at length we heard, faintly, then more distinctly, and then in all its deep and sonorous harmony, the tolling of the cathedral bell, which announced our vicinity to a great city. It has a singular effect, after travelling for some days through a wild country, seeing nothing but a solitary hacienda, or an Indian hut, to enter a fine city like Morelia, which seems to have started up as by magic in the midst of the wilderness, yet bearing all the traces of a venerable old age. By moonlight it looked like a panorama of Mexico, with a fine square, portales, cathedral, broad streets, and good houses. We rode through the city, to the house of Colonel Y, where we now are; but as we intend to continue our journey to its furthest limits without stopping, we are now, after a night's rest, preparing to resume our ride. They are saddling the horses, strapping on the sarapes behind the saddles, taking down and packing up our lits de voyage, and loading the mules, all which is a work of time. On our return we hope to remain here a few days, to see everything that is worthy of notice. Pascuaro. Accompanied by several gentlemen of Morelia, who came early in the morning to see C n, we set off for the warm baths of Cuincho, and as we rode along, the hill of Las Bateas was pointed out to us, where by order of the curate Morelos, 200 Spaniards were murdered in cold blood, to revenge the death of his friend, the curate Matamoros, who was taken prisoner and shot by orders of Yturbide. Horrible cruelty in a Christian priest! It is singular that the great leaders of the independence should have been ecclesiastics. The curate Hidalgo, its prime mover, the curates Morelos and Matamoros, the principal chiefs. Hidalgo, it is said, had no plan, published no manifesto, declared no opinions, but rushed from city to city, at the head of his men, displaying on his colours an image of the Virgin of Guadalupe, and inciting his troops to massacre the Spaniards. Morelos was an Indian, uneducated, but brave and enterprising, and considered the mildest and most merciful of these soldier priests. Matamoros, equally brave, was better informed. Both were good generals, and both misused the power which their position gave them over the minds of the unenlightened populace. When Morelos became generalissimo of the revolutionary forces, he took a step fatal to his interests and which led to his ultimate ruin. He formed a congress which met at Chilpansingo, and was composed of lawyers and clergymen, ignorant and ambitious men, who employed themselves in publishing absurd decrees and impossible laws, in assigning salaries to themselves, and giving each other the title of Excellency. Disputes and divisions arose amongst them, and in 1814 they published an absurd and useless document in the village of Apatzingan, to which they gave the name of the Mexican Constitution. The following year Morelos was defeated in an engagement which took place in the environs of Tesmelaca, taken prisoner, led to Mexico, and after a short trial, degraded from his ecclesiastical functions, and shot in the village of San Cristobal Escatepec, 7 leagues from the capital. The revolutionary party considered him as a martyr in the cause of liberty, and he is said to have died like a true hero. The appellation of Morelia, given to the city of Valladolid, keeps his name in remembrance, but her blood stained mountain is a more